Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good night. Um, just depending on when you're watching this. I just wanted to make some videos. I'll be making a few of these. Hopefully we'll keep it short so they won't be too long. But I was like, what can we do in this time when everyone's stuck in social isolation or social distancing, depending on whether you're feeling isolated or not, I suppose, by the distance. I thought, what could be some ways that we could spend some time together and still encourage us to grow as people? I think that's so. This was my question: what can I do that's helpful for the world right now on video? What do I know? After all, that's worth recording. Um, and I thought about thinking, right? Thinking. And what I mean is, here we are in the midst of a pandemic. It's been called. Everybody has different opinions. It's interesting. I love the fact that we are no longer arguing about Republicans and Democrats. It makes me very happy. But there's still some division. Oh, this is just overreaction. Everything's going to be fine. So there's clearly people have different responses to it. Is that because we're not thinking the same? Obviously, we're not thinking the same. So um, I thought it might be fun to do a series of videos on how to think critically about things. And first thing I want to tell you, and I think this is something, this is an illustration I've heard dozens of times from dozens of sources, and I don't know who to cite with this. So if you know where this illustration originated, let me know in the comments or something, and I will cite it next time. I'm not sure who the first one to say this is, but we are, when it comes to decision making, there's actually two ways that we make decisions. The first is from our gut, right? We don't think about it, we don't think about things sometimes. You might not think about what you want to wear that day. You just grab the first thing in your closet. That's the way it may not be you, but that's the way I function. Some things we just go with, and that's how the decisions are made. Other things we have to really critically think about. It's been suggested that that gut makes most of our decisions. And it's been put like this: we are all a rider on an elephant. You think about an elephant being sort of steered by someone. They are the rider knows which way to go, but a mouse starts running across the trail. The elephant's going to start to lean. The rider can then think, okay, wait a minute, how do I need to adjust to this? But we all start to lean one way or another, right? Based on all sorts of things. And this is where bias comes in. You've probably heard, well, that's just a biased opinion. Well, the fact is, every opinion is biased. And that's one of the crucial things that we need to understand about how to think critically is every single opinion begins with bias. Even the way we understand facts will begin with bias. We all have a bias. It's the lenses that we use to look at the world through. In fact, we have to. If we were unbiased, we'd be closer to a computer than a human being. And so we don't want that. We are biased. The crucial element is knowing what is my bias. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, when I look at anything, I know my bias, generally speaking, the lenses that I use to look at the world um, come in a couple of different categories. There's historical and there's theological, right? When I look at the world, I say, okay, the way I understand this is because of my belief in God, my belief that God rules over the universe, my belief that God is good. These are theological biases that I begin with. Or historically, humanity always seems to have this give and take with itself. I just see it over and over. We are compassionate people. Humanity is compassionate and murderous at the same time, and trying to navigate. Well, this is the way it's happened before, and that's the way it'll happen again. You've probably heard during this. You may have seen the Spanish flu stories of, I believe it was Philadelphia and St. Louis, where Philadelphia did not go on lockdown, and they just kind of went about life as normal, and a lot more people died. St. Louis locked it down and said nobody go outside, and they had a much better um, survival rate through the pandemic, partly because of that. You may have seen that, right? I look at those things from the past and I go, okay, this is the way it has worked. This is probably the way it will work. Bias, right? Those are our biases. So the first thing we have to do is understand, what are my biases. Just as I was thinking about this, and I'll just use a quick example. I think I mentioned this a little bit ago. There are those of us that say, is this a conspiracy, right? Government conspiracy to, I've heard, let's see, I'm trying to think of some of the things, and I don't want to, this is going to sound like I am speaking poorly of people who have said this, and I don't intend to. It's just a fact. I have heard people say the Democrats have started this conspiracy to keep Trump from getting elected again in the next cycle. I've heard people say this obviously rose out of a medical research facility in China, and they don't want anybody to know about it. And a lot of these things that people have said are said with deep conviction, right? This is clearly, that's the way it's said, this is clearly a conspiracy. This is clearly some lab in China messed up, and they're obviously lying to us about this. This sort of deep conviction about this. Now, I'm not. Maybe both of those things are true, or one or the other, right? I don't know if they both could be, but one or the other certainly could. And I'm not saying they're not, but I am saying there's no evidence right now. We can suspect. We can say, I wonder if it's not from there, or I wouldn't be surprised if the Democrat, and I'm not advocating either of those positions or opposing them, but I'm saying this is clearly a Democratic effort to prevent Trump's reelection. Is that clear? Why is it so clear? Because your elephant begins with the position that everything wrong in the world is the Democrats. Now, I'm not, again, please don't, this is not about politics. This is about your presupposition or your bias that you may bring to the table. That's fine if you want to hold that opinion and look for the evidence to prove that. I'm not going to argue that at all. I'm saying be careful, be aware. This is the point of this video. Hear this. Be aware of the lenses that you are using to look at the world through. I very much like my biases, theological, historical. I know something about those things. I have read about those things. I get those things. But I'm willing to say, okay, what if my bias was scientific? What if my bias was political, right? And let's look at that. Let's examine what it might look like to look at the world through a different set of presuppositions, a different set of biases. And I really think if you and I were people who were willing to do two things: know our biases, know, okay, this is where this is the lenses that I use to understand my world through. First of all, know that. That's it. Second of all, be willing to try to say, okay, all right, for just a minute, I'm gonna take off the lenses that I usually look at the world through, and I'm gonna try. It'll be foggy, it won't be clear. It's obviously not gonna be the wrong prescription for me, right? But I'm gonna try to look at the world through someone else's bias and try to understand how they perceive the world through that lens. And I really believe that if we could learn to do that, we could be more developed human beings, human individuals. I also feel like our society as a whole might begin to do better at loving and understanding one another. So that's my little tidbit: how to think critically. Think critically by knowing your own bias. So I want you to do that. Take some time this week, and just think about, what are some of the lenses that I use to look at the world through? And then second, What might it be like to try to look at the world through another set of lenses? You think about that. I'd love to hear your comments, love to hear your thoughts. If you have other things that you'd like to address about what help me think critically about things, and I'll be honest, we'll probably be talking about coronavirus a little bit because that's why we're watching this in the first place, right? We're stuck at home and we're bored. You wouldn't be watching me do this if you weren't. We all know that. So think about those things and let me know in the comments if you have questions, thoughts, or other things you'd like to see addressed. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I look forward to talking to you soon.